Here's your most common retirement advice. Stay social, stay busy, join a club. And here's what nobody tells you. Following that advice, if you're wired the wrong way, carries a measurable cost, not just emotionally, financially, physically, and in years off your life. This video is about that cost and what to do instead. Let's start with a number. Roughly 50% of all people are introverts. That means half the retired population is being handed a playbook that was designed for the other half. The advice is not neutral. It is not one size fits all. It is specifically engineered for people who recharge through social interaction. If you are not one of those people, following that advice doesn't just feel wrong, it actively costs you. Here's the mechanism. Introverts don't dislike people. They don't hate social interaction. The difference is biological. For an introvert, sustained social engagement activates the brain's threat response. Cortisol rises. Cognitive load increases. The nervous system treats forced socializing like low-grade chronic stress. And chronic stress is not abstract. It has documented effects. Elevated cortisol over time is linked to accelerated cognitive decline, weakened immune function, higher cardiovascular risk, and disrupted sleep architecture. You go to the Tuesday lunch group because your spouse thinks you need to get out more. You come home exhausted and write it off as just being tired, but that exhaustion is a signal, not a quirk. Your body is telling you something is wrong. The financial cost is less obvious but equally real. Think about what retirement planning assumes. It assumes you will maintain your health long enough to spend your savings. It assumes your cognitive functions stay sharp enough to manage your finances. It assumes you don't get hit with massive medical bills early in retirement. Every hour you spend forcing yourself into social environments that drain you is quietly eroding the very health that your retirement plan depends on. A 2015 study out of University College London tracked over 6,000 participants and found that social stress in later life was associated with a significantly higher risk of heart disease. The retirement advice designed to protect your well-being may be damaging the foundation it assumes you have. Now here is where the psychology gets really dark. The people pushing you hardest to socialize are the people who love you most, your spouse, your children, your oldest friends. They are not doing it maliciously, they are doing it because they are extroverts, measuring your well-being by their own internal metric. To an extrovert, a quiet afternoon at home looks like loneliness, it looks like depression, it looks like something that needs to be fixed. They hand you the extrovert playbook because it works for them, and when you follow it and come home drained, they don't see the cost, they see you getting out of the house. They call that a win. This creates a feedback loop that is genuinely destructive. You go, you feel depleted, you white-knuckle through it because everyone seems to think it's helping. You internalize the exhaustion as a personal failure. You wonder if something is wrong with you, and the quiet doubt that maybe the advice is actually wrong never fully forms because everyone around you is reinforcing it. Let me give you the actual math on what introversion in retirement costs versus what it could give you. The average retirement lasts roughly 18 to 20 years. In that window, your energy is your most finite and non-renewable resource. Unlike money, you cannot compound it. You cannot earn it back. Every day you spend performing a version of yourself built for someone else's nervous system is a day you don't get twice. The introvert who designs their retirement around their actual energy profile doesn't just feel better. They make better financial decisions because their cognitive function isn't chronically impaired by stress. They maintain their health longer because their baseline cortisol isn't elevated. They stay engaged in meaningful activities that create genuine psychological reward, which is the actual predictor of longevity in retirement, not how many book clubs they joined. A 2023 Harvard longitudinal study on aging found that the quality of relationships in retirement predicted health outcomes far more than the quantity. Not how many people you see, how meaningful the interactions are when you do see them. Introverts already optimize for this. They naturally gravitate toward a small number of deep connections over a large number of shallow ones. The advice to go join more groups is pushing them in the exact wrong direction for their actual biology. Here's the cost broken down into 3 specific categories. The first is the health tax. Forced social engagement for introverts is not neutral recreation, it is a stressor, and chronic stressors in retirement are associated with earlier onset of dementia, higher rates of depression, compromised immune function, and elevated cardiovascular risk. If you spend 10 hours a week in socially taxing environments because you feel obligated, and those 10 hours are consistently depleting rather than restorative, you are paying a compounding health tax that your retirement plan cannot absorb. The second is the opportunity cost. Every hour spent in a draining social situation is an hour not spent in a restorative one. Introverts who get to design their own time typically read more, create more, think more deeply, pursue mastery in subjects that interest them. These aren't trivial activities. Deep cognitive engagement in retirement is one of the most robust predictors of cognitive longevity documented in neuroscience research. The neighbor who spent his retirement at every social function may have looked more active. The introvert who spent those same years in deep solitary focus may have protected his mind far more effectively. The third is the identity cost. This is the one nobody puts a number on, but everyone feels. When you spend years performing a version of yourself that doesn't match who you actually are, something erodes. Your confidence in your own judgment, your trust in your own preferences, your sense that your way of being in the world is valid. The introvert who spends the first 5 years of retirement fighting the feeling that they are doing it wrong does not get those years back. The psychological cost of self-doubt in retirement is not small. It delays meaning-making. It delays the deep engagement that actually makes retirement rich. It keeps you on defense when you could be building something. Here is the reframe. Retirement is not a social problem for introverts. It is a permission problem. The advice to stay social, stay busy, join everything was written by researchers who measure successful aging using extrovert metrics. Social activity counts as healthy. Solitude doesn't show up on their scorecard. So the system generates advice that is systematically biased toward one neurological profile, and that bias costs half the retired population quality of life, health, and years. Here is what actually works instead. 1. Design your retirement around your energy source, not theirs. A good week for an introvert might look like 2 to 3 meaningful one-on-one interactions, several long stretches of uninterrupted solitary focus, and minimal obligatory social performance. That is not a problem to solve. That is a blueprint to execute. 2. Say no explicitly and without apology. Not just to yourself, but out loud to the people pushing you toward group activities and crowded calendars. The pressure is not stop until you name what is happening. Tell the people who love you directly, I recharge alone. I am not lonely. I am not depressed. This is what I need. Most of them will back off, and the ones who don't can be educated. 3. Protect 2 or 3 high-quality connections and invest them deliberately. Not the obligatory lunch group, the one friend you can sit with for 3 hours and leave feeling energized. Those relationships are your actual social infrastructure. Maintain them aggressively. Let everything else go. 4. Stop measuring your retirement by the extrovert scorecard. Full calendar does not equal full life. Quiet mornings, deep reading, solitary projects, unhurried thought, these are not gaps in your schedule. They are the schedule. Recalibrate your definition of a successful day so it matches your biology, not your neighbor's. The hidden cost of being pushed to socialize in retirement is not metaphorical. It is physiological, cognitive, financial, and existential. It is paid in depleted energy, damaged health, eroded identity, and years spent performing a retirement you didn't actually design. The people in the best shape in their 70s and 80s are not the ones who attended every social function. They are the ones who figured out what restored them and protected that relentlessly. For extroverts, that might mean a packed social calendar. For introverts, it means something quieter, deeper, and far more honest. You spent 40 years in a workplace built for the other half of the population. You attended the meetings, you did the networking, you showed up to things that drained you because the job required it. Retirement is the first chapter where you are not required to do anything. That is not a problem. That is the whole point. Stop letting someone else's definition of a good retirement override the one your own nervous system has been asking for your entire life.